How did we get here? Perhaps it all started that day in my father's throne room. He wanted me to fight on the front lines in his mad thirst for conquest. But the nation he wants us to invade had been our allies for centuries. I know our opponent, and I know how strong their soldiers are. The battle will cross the border into the nearby villages on our side. All my protests had fallen on deaf ears, however. My stepmother was the Duchess of the nation. I expected her to advise against writing her former home, but she encouraged it. With heavy hearts, my troops and I made ready for the trip, not knowing what madness drove my parents. In the weeks we spent marching through the mountains, I could hear my men whisper among themselves. His Majesty has lost his mind. Why must we turn our blades against our strongest ally? His Majesty is sending us to our graves. What choice do we have, though? Father had made himself clear. We fight, or be executed as traitors. Even me, his own son. Either way, we will meet our ends. We stopped some miles away from the border and set up camp to rest. My men were all uneasy. I noticed some of them heavily scratching their arms or legs, breaking skin. A horrible habit picked up by many soldiers to cope with the stress ever since my father married the Duchess. Some I've seen lamenting about their families, their wives, their children, their parents, and in some cases, their grandchildren. Our families will never see us again. I went into my tent and looked at the map that lay on the table. Our strategy is set, but it will not do us any good. Tomorrow, we march into battle. Preparations are ready, my lord. The general walked in and gave me a small bow. I couldn't answer him. I looked back down at the map, balling my fists tightly to keep them from shaking. Would that we could make your father see sense, the general sighed as he walked over to me. Your Highness, could you please pray with me? Of course. I went around the table, and we knelt side by side in silent prayer. Hopefully, the gods will hear us. At dawn, we marched across the border into battle, meeting our enemy. Their numbers far outweighed ours. Both sides charged forth, swords and shields clashing. Blood began to stain the battlefield as the deafening cacophony of battle cries and death wails filled the air. For every soldier I cut down, another took their place. But before I knew it, I was on my back, sword pointed at my neck. The men closest to me were cut down. The soldier in front of me raised his sword and swung it down. That was the last thing I remember of that day. I woke up, half buried in a ditch with the rest of my army. In the months that followed, I stayed in hiding as my wounds healed. And then I gathered as much information and as many allies as I could. The narrative being whispered around the kingdom is that I took an army of my own to try and invade our allies against my father's wishes. So, he wants to make me the villain. Was this his plan all along? Or is there more to this? No matter. I'll get my revenge soon enough.